Become a member on Patreon to watch the ad-free video version of this interview. The link is in the description.
Beyond the Forbidden.
I did a video on this a while ago. I was way back. The more people are talking about it now, but when you Google search things, you'll say there's a billion search hits, but you'll only get like 300 of them, and very controlled choices. And the other stuff, I wasn't even sure necessarily if it still exists on the internet. I have to remember old sites that I used to know 20 years ago, and then I can go, and they're still there, but if you don't remember it in your head, if you don't know the exact address anymore, you'll never be able to bump into it on any kind of search or, so it is very, it's now very, I don't, controlled isn't even the word. It's very directed. Everyone's search, because it's like nobody goes past about 2 pages of the internet anyway. Whatever somebody clicks in, if it's not on page 1 or 2, they kind of just stop anyway. So it's whatever comes up right at the beginning. That's like all the average person is ever going to look at for a subject. So it's very directed. The internet is now trying to get you to certain ideas. And if you want to get away from those ideas, from the standard ideas, your search words have to become so good now. You have to almost be an expert in search words if you want to find something what you're really looking for. It's
They don't have me
it's
figured
almost
out.
like it would almost need to be a course in university, how to search the internet.
You're right, and they don't have me figured out, Howard. Or I'm sure you, because if I go to Google, and that's a shame, that is the place where most of everything is. I don't just go to the first few things that pop up. I'm going to like the 10th page, you know what I mean, or the 20th page. I'm searching. Like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Most people just whatever pops up right there, and most of that crap is sponsored anyway. It says sponsored and ads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's all marketing and all that crap, all that digital BS, and some of that stuff we might get into. Some of the like the maybe AI, NPCs, simulation, and I would like to. You've already talked about it, and some things we're going to talk about. I have questions and stuff, statements that you may not have talked about, and you just give me what your gut tells you. But with I forgot when it was, early 2000s, mid 2000s, whenever you were going through, I don't even know how to say it, your suicide phase, whatever.
My depression phase,
depression,
or my work, or my work on myself phase, because there's 2 different
pieces
there.
Your depression phase. I'm sorry. Because
the depression phase. Okay, yeah.
Because we've all that when I heard that was very powerful. I think I heard it off the higher side, and that was very powerful. And I don't want to get on too much about it, but to me, before you give the, I guess, the clip notes or whatever, however long you want to talk about it, to me, whenever you go through that phase, that depression or the suicidal thoughts, we've all had. I don't care who you are. If you're human, if you're not an NPC, you've had thoughts throughout your life. And when you go through this downward path in your life with depression and these psychic vampires that attack you, one thing I've noticed, and I think it happens with you lose all ego, you lose all pride, you lose everything. Like, there's no control, like, over your life in a way. So in a way, if you can overcome that depression, you'll rise above further than what you expected whenever you get out of it, because like, you lose everything. You know what I mean? It's like you're almost on the verge of suicide, or not saying that you would do it, but the thoughts are there. You lose all pride, ego, everything that's in this physical world, everything. Like, you don't care about it. So you're almost like a clean slate. Does that make sense? How?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Um, what he's talking about in my personal case, this happened in about 1996 to 97, so almost 20 over 25 years ago now. And it had come from a long series of various traumas that had happened in my life that kind of just compounded one on top of the other. And these traumas just sort of pulled away, it just pulled life away from me. A combination of I had no more interact I couldn't interact with life anymore. It just pulled the rug out from under me. Combination of I had a father who had stolen a lot of money from me when I was in university, and so made a giant mess of my whole university life. And then as soon as that was ending, I had an ex-girlfriend who was murdered. And so these events of sort of ways that you see the world were stopped. The way that you're supposed to view reality, I saw no longer worked. That just doesn't fit. But nothing came to replace it. So when nothing comes to replace it, you kind of just drift. The problem for me was not only was I in the drift phase, I found that I was getting meaner and more manipulative. And one day I realized that life was screwing me over. So I was getting into this point where I'm going to try to screw life over first. That was kind of the way I was getting. And once I realized that, that's kind of when the depression hit, because it was this, why did I get like this? So it was the first part of introspection of, yeah, I may be having a bad time here, but I don't need to compound it by how I'm living. So when I was moving into the depression, it's a really interesting phase because the depression can be two things. Depression can come from you don't have what you want. That's one kind of depression. You don't have there's things that you want and you don't have it. So that's a depression of lacking something, and that doesn't necessarily lead to a lot of transformation. If the depression comes from the side of something tells you it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter, that there's a meaninglessness to life. If it comes from that side of it, the problem, or not the problem, the power in that depression is when someone's in that state of depression, a part of us knows that's true. We don't know why it's true, but there's something in it that's true. And say, what you got to get out of bed and do something. No, I really don't. And there's a part of you that's true. And the challenge comes though is if you just stay in that place, if you just stay there, you don't get to use that power to finding out, well, what does that mean? What does it actually mean? So in that state, if someone happens to be listening and you're in that state now, don't be scared of it. It's not fun. I can guarantee you. Been right there. It's
Yeah.
not fun. I was at the point where he was saying I actually wanted to commit suicide. I just couldn't figure out a good way to do it. So it's not a fun place to be, but it's also there's a power in there because you might say if the switch gets flicked up back on again, if something can reveal to you a total new direction to take in that moment, it's like the depression turns into a powerful energy. For me, it was a video on Egyptian pyramid building, and when that came on in the midst of this, I knew instantly I'm supposed to spend time studying the ancient wisdom of Egypt. And it was instant. It was clear. That's what I'm supposed to do. There was no questioning it. And I went from no energy, like hard to get out of bed for days. And all of a sudden I could just go to the library and read 10 books a day. The energy level just changes. And you have to, when you're in that part of the depression, I think there's no one there to tell you it's okay. It's not fun, but it's okay. You just have to be patient. And if you're patient and aware, that's the other thing. You kind of can't just sit and do nothing either. You've kind of got to be a little bit active in it somehow, kind of
Mhm.
like I'm looking for the door. I'm looking for where there's you're not going to get this thrown at you without a door. And you're waiting, but when you do see the door, whatever that is, then it's time to okay, this is over now. It's time to move. It's time to act, and it's time to learn from where you've been. Did you recognize that from yourself?
Oh yeah, exactly. And with me, I've had several bouts, I guess, with depression. It could be a stupid freaking girlfriend or whatever, like an old relationship. And another another one, probably maybe 5, 6 years ago, man, I was doing these interviews and stuff, and I was getting too deep in some stuff, like sex trafficking and stuff like that. And and my Facebook page manager, Peter, he says, "Man, you you just ghosted. You went stealth mode." I went. I guess I needed a break.
Exactly.
One thing with covering alternative topics, I cover everything. What we'll be talking about, the nature of reality, conspiracies, the paranormal, ancient mysteries, the occult. And one thing you have to discipline yourself, and you have to, like you said, stay active. And I look at that as finding another source of like where you can calm your mind down. You can we all need to escape. We all have our form of escapism, and mine is I like to go to the park. I like to walk. I like to be with nature, and that's my form, and family, of course. But everybody needs to find their own form of escapism. I don't care if you like playing video games. If you're researching these topics, you're listening to people that I have on this show, like Howard and Mickoski, or anybody else, and you're into these topics, you need to have your own form of escapism. It's okay to do what the average NPC would do, play video games or whatever it is, as long as you're aware of the nature of our reality and the BS, this bullshit reality that we live in, and you're aware of all these things that's going on behind the scenes. It's okay to have your form of escapism. Well, what do you think about that? What is your form of escapism, Howard?
Wow, my escapism.
Yeah.
Um, I'd like to watch college football on Saturdays.
Yes, me too.
Actually,
Yeah.
that's a nice
Yeah.
day break to kind of just zone out. Um, yeah, little things. It's just to get outside. During the summer, it's great because when I've got the garden going, then once you kind of have to take breaks because there's work to be done on the crops. So it forces you to get out. It forces you to get your hands in the ground.
Gardening too.
The
Yes.
best thing for me though is a little bit similar to you. I like to be in nature, but I'm not a big walker. I like to go places that's very quiet and still and just be there in
Hmm.
stillness.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite things to do. But this is very important because especially as you start researching anything away from the normal, and particularly if you start researching into the nature of reality, which is what we're going to talk about. That's what my
Hmm.
books are about. That's what I deal
Yep.
with. Where are we and what the hell is this place really? It's not fun stuff. It's quite dark potentially.
Hmm.
It's quite challenging to be and I see a lot of people, if you just go too hard into it too fast, too long, you burn out. You literally,
Yeah.
yeah, you literally just you'll turn yourself wild. And you need to take, like you say, you need to have breaks, like literally scheduled, and not just in the day. You need to make sure you've got periods of time. I had one where I was from about 2000 to 2004. So those 4 years is when I was working with the Korean monk and I was working with several native Indian medicine men. And the main area of study was proving if reality was solid. So I was spending 4 years doing intense exercises on myself and my mind and reality to test it. And at certain points of that near the end, it was breaking down so badly that I was having trouble dealing with what I was coming across. And just so everyone knows, I would never use drugs in this kind of work because there's a dangerous pathway as soon as you start going down there. Yeah, it can open a door, but it demands something from you for opening the door. And I don't think what they demand is anything worth what they give, given that you can do all that yourself. You have all the power to go into the same places yourself and then leave when you want. So everything was done through exercises and through work. And at one point, I was literally, um, it was like the same car would drive by me 10 times in the span of like 2 minutes. And like little things it was just my reality was breaking down so much. And so I phoned to where my Zen teacher was, to where Mr. Park was, and told him what had happened. and he had responded. He didn't speak English, but responded to somebody who could translate for him. And he said, he thinks you're going crazy, but he thinks it's quite funny. He said, you should just take a couple of days and go play golf and just kind of forget about all this work for a while and just be out all day in golf and then get back to us. And I thought first thing was, okay, he thinks I'm going crazy, but he thinks it's funny. So obviously it's not dangerous, but something's going on that's not. So he said, just go golf. So that's what I did. I golfed for like 2 days straight. When it was done, I was totally grounded again. I was like, oh yeah, everything's fine. I'm still dealing with reality. I'm still asking my questions, but I didn't feel myself spinning. And that's a really good reminder that we need to not just take parts of the day, it's to actually take pieces of a week if needed to literally have, we're turning off all of our, we're turning off our computers, we're putting our books away. We're just going to do something else completely so that we're back dealing with the natural world for what it is, and then you can go back. So yeah, you need to take those, you need to take those spaces for yourself, or the egoic mind will just get too threatened, and when the egoic mind gets too threatened too early, it's not fun.
Exactly. So I guess let's go ahead and jump into it. And I'm glad that you went ahead, or we went ahead and discussed some possible some pros, some put some light on this situation on this, because instead a lot of people like to wait towards the end to kind of give things, examples of what to do, you know. And also with your experience with your depression and stuff like that. One thing, and I commend you for speaking out about that, because everybody has, I would say, majority of people, even researchers, have experienced things like that. But a lot of people, you are one of the few that actually have talked about your personal experiences like that. So I commend you
Mhm.
for that, and that I really appreciate you. That just makes me respect you a hell of a lot more than I already respected you. You know what I mean? So what happened in your life? Like I said, we're going to jump into it. What happened into your life where
Sure.
you just woke up and this reality isn't quite what it seems to be? It possibly could be a simulation, maybe not quite like a video game, but something along those lines. Was it like deja vu experiences? Was it just seeing 1122 like I do a lot, 322? What was that first glitch in your biological makeup mainframe that just like, man, something's
Okay.
off here,
If
you
we
know?
go back, because really the work, what do we call work in this field, like didn't start until like, yeah, then by the way, that's the wood stove opening. Anybody's hearing what that noise is? My wife is making sure to stay nice and toasty in here. Um, I didn't really start working hard on these subjects and didn't really think about them overly in detail until 1998. But I had these weird events in the past. So I guess for me, it would have been um, some out of body experiences that I had when I was still a teenager. That would have been the first ones of them. Ones where I was walking into a room and then realized I was asleep on the couch and kind of like, I'm here, but I'm there on the couch. What the hell's going on? And you kind of put that out of your mind, but not totally. There's something when if you've had that experience and you've just thought about it at all, it stays with you. So I've got a few of those out of body kind of experiences. But beyond that, I was never questioning reality per se until after Joan died. After Joan was murdered, that's kind of pushed me in a different direction. I was a hockey player. I liked to go out. Then I became a stand-up comedian. You know, okay, I was living a different life, but it was still within the bounds of normal, and I didn't think too much about it. But after her death, and I began the spiral, began that spiral. I was questioning a lot of why do we live the way we live, but I wasn't questioning if it's a simulation or if it's real yet. But once I started digging into ancient Egypt and started recognizing that, because it took me into fields of alchemy and hermeticism and shamanism and yeah, Zen and Taoism and Gnostic Christianity. It didn't matter. It was whatever I thought was going to help me understand the ancient world. That's where I went and studied, and it was an obsessive 8 or 9 years of my work of my life. And like I say, I guess my first big point would have been when I fully, what, because you're reading all this stuff. Oh, the world's a dream, or the world's, and we don't know really what that means. It's words on a page. You can kind of get an idea. But for me, the first day I'll tell you, I can remember the two events that changed that I thought how I thought about reality. One, we can talk about these however you want, but one was a death experience that I had in 1999 where I saw myself die in a parallel reality. And so realized there's more than one of me and there's more than one of this reality. That was a pretty changing event. The other is when I was doing these exercises to test reality. And it was one where there was a guy walking with a girl ahead of me, maybe like um, if I do this, maybe about 20 yards ahead of me. So you still have them in view, but they're a bit ahead of you. And it was a particular way of walking where the world would kind of begin to drift a little, but all of a sudden the guy disappeared. Not the girl, just the guy. The guy would just vanish, and I could perfect. And the thing was I knew he vanished because there was a sign behind him, and I couldn't read the sign that he was walking towards. And all of a sudden he vanished, and I could read the sign perfectly. And then the guy came back, and they walked off, and I got close enough to recheck the sign to make sure, yeah, that's exactly what I just read. So the guy actually, I couldn't have seen that sign as long as the guy was physically there. And that's when I started to realize this isn't solid. This is totally transparent. This is a totally non-physical reality. And it was at that point that I doubled my search much deeper into trying to figure out what these ancients knew about it. Of course, at that time, I was still trying to control the world a little bit. I was still in that, how do I manifest what I want? How do I make the world do what I want? How can I control it? How can I fix it? I'm seeing, of course, reality is a really sick place. How do I make it better? So it took a while of playing those games until I realized that that's a waste of time too. There's a totally different way to deal with an unreal reality, and in fact a dark reality with our energy. But I tried to fix it for a long time, and guess what? Never got fixed.
And it kind of reminds me, you talking about this guy that kind of disappears. And I cover all type of alternative topics. Like I said, ancient mysteries, the occult, the
Mm,
paranormal, or nature of
mm.
reality. Kind of reminded me of the Men in Black, and also the movie, in a way, the Adjustment Bureau. Have you seen that movie, The Adjustment Bureau?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
Man, wow! It's almost like people can just come in and out of this reality or this dimension or whatever it is, you know. But
yeah.
one thing that kind of woke me up, like, man, something's going on with this, with our nature reality and our existence, was probably '08, maybe '07, '08. Me and my girlfriend then, uh, we 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 didn't live together or nothing like that. She was still living with her parents. And '06 or '07, I think I might have still been living with my parents, and I was going to college for a little bit. But she had a dream. I had a dream. Well, anyways, she told me her dream that she was in a desert. I'm paraphrasing, so I've told the story. Maybe I've had a few things mixed up because it's been a while. But she was in the desert. She was being chased by somebody, and somebody that she believed was trying to kill her. So she went in this house, she hid and everything. But during this dream, she had somebody with her, but she couldn't tell who it was. So, and then that person that was chasing her, and this other person that she couldn't tell who it was, went to inside the house, and then she and this other person went outside and hid them underneath the truck, and they just waited right there up underneath this truck until this this person that was trying to kill her, and this person that she didn't know, in the dream she knew it was somebody, she didn't know who it was. That's long that's just a synopsis of the story. So and it shocked me. I kind of started shaking when she told me that, uh Howard, because I was like, no freaking way. She's like, what? I said, I had the same exact dream, I shit you not. But I was in the desert. I was running. You know, I was being chased by somebody was trying to kill me,
Mhm.
and I had somebody with me. Uh, but I couldn't tell who it was. I couldn't tell who it was. You know,
Mm.
so I went inside the house, and then that person that was trying to kill me and that person that was with me,
Mm.
we went outside, got underneath the truck. We had the same dream with different perspectives. And man, it kind of gives me chills like right now, even thinking about it, you know. And what is that? Well, like what is that a glitch in the matrix? Like what is that? You know?
No, it's an event called dreaming together. I mean, when we dream alone, we are dreaming, we're moving into various parallel realities, or we're moving into the astral realm, we're moving into places where we're non-physical, where just our consciousness and awareness is totally creating the environment. Now you can learn how to do that with people, like with somebody that you're close to in some way. Like you can't just, it's very hard to just dream together with like somebody you meet off the street and decide, hey, let's dream together tonight. Probably not going to happen. You need to have some sort of connection with that person, but you can learn how to be in the same location together. Now, in your case, it happened and it was a terrifying experience.
Yeah.
But you could have learned, if you obviously then you had this connection to do it, you could have learned how to be in a place, how to set up where you're going to be, you might say, so that, say you're researching a subject, well, you can both go in the place of that subject together. And what's amazing is then you get two different perspectives of information then coming back. You're both in the same place. You'll have very similar experiences, but not the same. But then you'll come back with one piece of information, and the other person will come back with another piece of information, and you're sort of doubling what you've done on your own. So you can actually use this for some really powerful stuff. So that's what it is. It's a connecting of, uh, however you want to call it, a connecting of soul parts or whatever you want to say. And you're moving into the same place. I'm sorry that yours had to be so difficult and terrifying on day one. They don't have to be. You can do that with in a way that brings you information. Yeah. But as soon as you go into those realms, you have to be ready for what you're dealing with, because it's not all fun and games when you go into these places, and you have to be aware of what you're doing.
Many people, Howard, they have their own theories of what simulation is, and we'll get into the NPCs and the reincarnation soul trap and all that here in just a minute also. But many people will have their own theories and speculation of what a simulation is and how we might be living in a type of matrix like artificial construct. With your research, what have you come across to explain the simulation, if it is a simulation that we live in?
Yeah, the first challenge, of course, is to now we're digging into the topics in my new book, which is Exit the Cave. And the first topic is, first I have to say, of course, I don't know for sure what's going to happen after we die. I want to make sure everybody knows that. I don't know for sure how this realm was created or why. I just have my 25 years of experience and research that's put together now what I feel is a pretty good starting point as the thesis, which is not shared too often in many places. And I share it to get people to think, to get people to ask some questions about what they've always believed. And for me, the starting point is, we have been given a belief structure of this reality since we were very young children, and we've never questioned it. That belief structure is, this, whatever you want to call it, realm was created by a loving God who cares about us, who built this reality so that we can live and grow and learn and perfect ourselves and have some difficult experiences, but things we're going to learn along the way, and so that we can become absolutely perfect and join this creator again. That's what we've been told. And everything then we base our whole existence on, that's the foundation. Now, there are a couple of cultures and civilizations in the past, particularly ones that the Church of Rome decided they wanted to exterminate, those being the Gnostics 2,000 years ago, the Cathars in France, and several others who had a very different story of creation. They claim that there is a complete absolute. They don't use the word God. They don't use any word for it because they say as soon as you put a word to it, you've already destroyed it. It's a totality, right? From that totality, though, things manifested out of one of which was will just for simplification an error. And this one error decided that it wanted to create on its own. And what it created, known as this thing known as a demiurge to Gnostics or Rex Mundi to Cathars, tried to create a world for itself, but couldn't. It was a lifeless creation, which sounds very computer world. It's a lifeless AI creation, which needed outside help in order to make it grow. The problem is this creation and under those stories is built by an evil demiurge, and it's built for one purpose only, to keep providing the power for the system to keep working. That's it. That's the only reason that physical matter exists, is for this evil, sick demiurge to keep his realm running. Now, if that's true, that changes everything we've ever thought about of this world. And it, of course, explains a lot of things. The challenge that we deal with is we are not, while we're physically in this realm, the true part of us is not from this realm. The demiurge pulled divine sparks from outside of this simulated creation and brought them in here. So we are actually powerful sparks of the totality, powerful sparks of the absolute. But we have been tricked and deceived into being here, and the whole existence is just here to keep us tricked in it, focused on it, be mindful for energy. Like I say, I mean, it makes sense. If you've got think of how big, if we're taking this as a computer, I'm not saying it is a computer, but if that's the metaphor
That's
we're
the
going to
only
use.
reference we have. Yes.
Yeah, it's a good one based on how many options we've got to from when it was a dream 2,000 years ago. It's a computer simulation. Okay, if you think, we're not talking about the material world, we're talking about the material world, the etheric realm, the astral realm, the angel realm, the super duper realm, and maybe millions of other similar parallel realities. The computing power you would need to run that is staggering. It would make sense if you could generate the power from the things inside the simulation itself. If the computer game characters could generate the power for the computer game to keep running, that would be brilliance. And it's sick, but that's what we're under. I think that we've been told we're farm animals. We're like equivalent to farm animals. We're here being farmed for energy, but I think it's even more simplistic that we're being used as the power source to keep the thing running. Because if the power ever goes off, just like any computer simulation, it ends. And for the demiurge, if it ends, the demiurge ends. The demiurge and what they're called archons, who are what you might call alien helpers who work with the demiurge,
John
they
Lim
need this to
Lash
keep
talks
running.
about that too. Not in
Yeah,
his image.
yeah,
Yes.
right. They need to keep this running. So that to me now makes absolute complete sense and starts to explain all of the massive holes we've had for thousands of years as to why we believe the world is one way, but the experience of it is completely different. Why this is pretty much a realm of suffering and not a realm of anything positive and helpful. Because if this was truly done by a loving creator, it wouldn't be anything like this at all. There's no way this would be anything like this. This is suffering to the degree of right up here. And that tells you then maybe the problem is actually with what we've been told to believe from day one. And if we start, and I'm not saying what to believe, I'm just saying maybe we should question this. Because if we start questioning it and start finding something that's more true, then we might be able to know what our response to reality should be, what our response to our life should be. Um, and in my case, to say, well, I'm going to go home then. I've been at this party long enough. It's not fun anymore. I'm going home. And that's the that's kind of become the focus of the work, which is exit the cave. We can study the cave forever. You can study the matrix for 1,000 years and it's just going to be a whole lot of extra information. Not too many people are actually studying how do you leave.
Exactly. Exactly. And we may touch on some of that here in just a little bit, but and it just like we're saying, you know, the computer, the Sims world, the this game that we live in, that those are just references. And also science. You got to believe in the science, but they have been talking about that everything is ones and zeros, right? Everything is digital, even to the very make of our existence.
Yeah.
And
It's all yin and yang. Yeah, it's all just zeros and ones. It's all just the interplay of this. And you mentioned the Adjustment Bureau. So there's
oh
there that
man,
all of these things. It
just
doesn't
so
matter now what movie we start moving into Adjustment Bureau, Dark City, The Matrix, Truman Show.
Dark
So
City. Oh my
Adjustment Bureau.
gosh. Oh
Yeah.
my
So
gosh.
so the Adjustment Bureau is really a story about life scripts. And this is a really sneaky thing that we don't realize. We think we've got free will. We're told, oh yes, you have free will. You're making all of your choices. But Adjustment Bureau is showing very clearly there's scripts. And there are these beings that are making sure we run certain scripts. And the sneaky part of Adjustment Bureau, and we can, we don't have to go into the totality of this movie,
Yeah,
but is that at the end of the movie, people think, and it was not Leo DiCaprio. It
Matt
was
Damon. Matt Damon.
yeah, Matt Damon. They think, oh, he won because he managed to get his life script changed, so now he could have the life script of living with the girl Emily Blunt, and now they live happily ever after, and this is wonderful. But we were revealed that before that, oh, this used to be your life script, but the chairman had changed it to a different something else. And said, but oh, the chairman changed it for you. It's okay. He's still in a life script. Okay, it's a life script he might like more than other, but it's not truly one that was freely chosen because we don't know exactly what's happened in the pre-birth realm of what sort of bizarre contracts and agreements we've made before we come in here. They might have made tricked us into here's 10 life scripts. Agree to one of them. Yeah, okay, I'll take this one then. Yeah, fine, okay. But we should have billions of life scripts to choose from, not just a few. And that's what I think the Adjustment Bureau is sneakily telling us. We think we're getting off into making our own choice of living our life and not even realizing it's just another life script that's been set out for us, and you're not really living free. And to me,
It,
that's something like the Carlos Castaneda books. That's what it's really about. He calls it finding the totality of the self, which would be breaking everything, getting to the point where you've broken every single piece of control mechanism, every single piece of deception mechanism that's been on us since even before we were born, and actually finally have it all gone. And for the first time in our existence, take a step exactly the way we want to take it. It's an amazing thought to finally get to that point where we actually know what freedom really is.
and I really didn't want to talk about the Adjustment Bureau this much, but man, if people that have not seen it, if you watch this movie and you're awake and aware to this bullshit reality we live in, you will see the similarities to
Mhm.
to everything. And it makes me wonder, do we actually have any free will? Do are everything, all this craziness that happens in on the world
Right.
stage and politics and everything, the selected, not elected, the selected leaders, is it all just a computer program by the architect in the Matrix? Like, is it?
Yeah.
And these people within the Adjustment Bureau, these people that come in and they manipulate everything and steer Matt Damon away from Emily Blunt
Yeah.
within this movie, because they have, I look at it like a program that a directive that he has to
Right.
fulfill, which is, I believe, to become
Right.
a senator or a president, wasn't it? I think president,
President, I
I
think,
believe.
yeah, that was supposed to be, yeah.
And
Yeah.
but what if his true self, his true nature, his existence, his true
Yeah.
identity wasn't, that's not what he wanted, that's not what his soul really sought after. So those people that was manipulating everything to try to
Mhm.
steer him to the presidency, I look at that like,
Yeah.
man, how come me and you can't just become president? Because we don't have these, whatever these players are, that the Adjustment Bureau people, We don't have them pushing us towards, I guess I'm, long story short, I'm looking at it like, what if something like that really is going on? And those people that were manipulating Matt Damon, they are part of the program within the simulation. And that's the
Yeah.
reason why when it seems like we don't have free will, because we're, and maybe we go through the depression because we're always fighting back. We're always fighting against the what the program already has. And everything seems like it just keeps going to hell in a handbasket. Nothing's getting better because we we're fighting against the program. But I think the only way we can break through the program and change the program, um, is if there's a collective conscious evolution or revolution and awakening on a massive global scale. Maybe that's when things can change. I'm not sure, but you see what I'm saying? There's so many directions that we could go with that.
Yeah, there's a lot. I wrote down about 6 different things, so I'll
Go
try to
ahead.
get
The
to
floor is
all the
yours,
things you brought
man.
up.
The floor is yours. And
No, I mean this is
go ahead.
this is what makes good conversations, right?
Yeah.
When somebody is sharing personal feelings and ideas, because that's when the information starts to rise,
Yeah.
right? So this is really good. So first one we came up with is, do we have really truly have free will? And as soon as somebody says, everybody has an event, at least one event in their life when they say it was destined to happen. It doesn't matter whether had to meet this person or I had this car accident or it was destined to happen. Well, as soon as you say something is destined to happen, that's not free will. Just that and alone indicates something is actually programmed into the reality that we're living, right? So right away it means, okay, then obviously we don't have total free will then. Otherwise we should be able to choose everything totally. So
Mm-hmm.
then the question is, how much do we really have? you know do we have free will for the bigger choices, or do we just get free will for, like, the next sip I'm going to take, it's going to be tea or water? Which is it going to be? Maybe that's the amount of free will I've really got, that for a while our free will is so small we don't even notice it. We're on these life scripts. Now, that doesn't mean I think we can create more and more and more of it. The question becomes, we don't really know how much we actually have. And I didn't even realize until recently how many times I've been manipulated in my life, how many times I thought I was making a decision totally on my own, whether it's which direction to go, whether I should do this, whether I should say yes to this, even like, should I go to this party or not? And I've looked back in time after years of my life recapitulations to realize there are these energetic beings that have been playing and screwing with me and manipulating me to do certain things along the way. And most of the things that I was manipulated to do were not really helpful to me. In fact, the book I'm writing now, which is Exit the Cave, was kind of in the beginning process back in 2004. It was beginning to be written then. I then had my death experience in 2005, and I went on a completely different route of research and study and wrote a completely different book. And I realized I was manipulated away. I could have wrote the book I wrote now 15 years ago and have maybe really had more time to dig into what I think is a critical topic, but I went into the more where you're supposed to go spiritually, which is awareness and oneness and the unity of the world, and just the work of self-knowing, which is all valuable, but it's just a piece of a much bigger puzzle. And I left the rest of the puzzle aside to go into the more safe area. And I realized I was manipulated to do that. Actually, I was manipulated to go away from a dangerous place. And it wasn't until the combination of me writing the book, exposing the expositions on all the lies of history and the world fairs,
Yeah.
and then all of this stupid insanity we've had over the last 2 years, and just saying, okay, you know what? There's no time left for games. Game time is over. And if I'm going to have something to say now, I better have I better have something very real and very honest to say, because we don't have time. And it was the combination of these things that pushed me back to where I was 15 years ago. So we were already dealing with, we don't really know how much free will we've got. We're being manipulated. And we're like, so right away we've got, oh boy, we're into that problem. Then we've got the third issue we're dealing with from this is reality, the way this reality is structured and set up. So once you begin to see it as some sort of artificial reality, some sort of yeah, simulation again is just a word, but however you want to start looking at reality as not being the way we thought it is, again, we go back to the original program belief, which you were mentioning. How can we figure out how to fix it? How can we change it? How can we make it better? But can a video game character change their game? Can a video game character change the video game? And this game might be set up for one thing only: make everything in it suffer so we can steal energy from them. And that's it. And maybe that's what the thing is set up for. Now we can seemingly, because we have a ton of power, more power than humans have wanted to believe, and we
Mhm.
can make changes in our reality. We can make changes in our personal world, in our small circle of community. We can definitely make that. But as soon as we try to fix the game, fix the program, it's almost like that's another wasted energy drain. If we start learning how to use our energy to transform what we have the ability to transform, and not try to fix something that doesn't need to be fixed. I've always said this a lot of times. Yeah, the world's insane, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's insane, and but it's been set up to be insane. And once we recognize that the original setup of this world was set up by an insane creator, it now it's like, well, that makes complete sense. Everything makes sense now, right? So, and what is my what you call true, what is absolute, is outside of the whole matrix completely. It's outside of this whole reality, and it's not interfering. It's not trying to fix this realm. It's waiting. It's not. It's like the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, right? There's the real God pointing his finger towards us, and he's just leaving it. He's not doing more, just pointing the finger. It's our job to point our finger back there and reconnect, right? It's there, but we're trying to force that thing that's outside the matrix and put it in the matrix. We're trying to make the matrix what's outside of it, and that's where we have been, us anyway, those of us in this world. That's kind of, I think, the mistake we've made for a long time. When we look at these real ancient civilizations, the Maya, the Anasazi, the pre-Inca, the pre-Egyptians, the ones who built all of these ancient structures, they all disappeared, right? They literally disappeared. No one knows what happened to any of them. And it's highly likely they finally realized, however long they've been trying to fix this world, control this, and you can really, if you get to know the code, you can fix some coding here. But
Mhm.
it's a lot of work, it's a lot of hassle, and it's a tremendous amount of energy. Eventually, they might have just decided, you know what? Let's just go home. And they did it together. They managed to pool their energy together as a group, and the Maya maybe just gone. And that is also something that kind of really interests me about this reality again, is if we stop putting our energy into trying to fix it, and instead we put our energy back into our own source of power, well, what can we do with that? And we can talk about prayer and all sorts of things as we go along. But once we start turning our power back internally to ourselves, what we can start doing individually and in small groups is endless. And a lot of what this whole realm is set up to do is make sure we don't know that. It's a giant distraction out there of all sorts of things, not only from terrible things and painful things, but also things that are keeping us just looking down another rabbit hole, looking for more stuff, learning more of this. It's all designed to distract us away from right here, because all the
Mhm.
power's here. It's not out there, it's here. And everything we do is there. And we need to go there for a while until we realize all I need to be is here. And once I'm here, the power's endless.
Exactly. Well said. And I guess to steer a little bit, because we can keep going down that rabbit hole, but I have so many um things I wanted to talk about. So
Sure.
is
Hey,
sent
this is your interview. I'm here for you.
trying to think where I want to go with it, but so let's go here. Is sentient life forms in our solar system and other solar systems, if they are there, exist, if we're not just only sims in this world, created to and other solar system created to form and act like something like a battery, like Morpheus mentions in the Matrix. And is our consciousness, which is pure energy, created like a power plant spirit farm that these gods,
Mm.
the simulation architect, or whatever label you choose, can come in and out, can come in and harvest our essence, our energy, and our consciousness like a farmer would harvest its crops. Cartoon movies like Monsters Inc. portrays this also, and I know you also wrote about that in your book.
Mm. Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it. It's this challenge of that. Once you know there are dark
Everything's
entities
energy,
out there.
everything's energy.
Yeah,
And
everything is energy. Everything is once you realize it, yeah, the physical thing I'm using with my life and the table I'm touching and the chair I'm sitting on, that these are just wrappings of energy. They're just like in a video game that or a computer program we're seeing. It's an image on a screen. Now we've come to it's a much more complex image, but it's still a giant holographic world is really what it is. And once we realize that there's energy and then there's beings that were here along with the initial energy, um, yeah, each of the ancient civilizations has different names for them, but they describe them very similarly. The problem is we got taught very early on that these beings are here to help us, and we give them names, spirit guides, angels, power animals, whatever. And I'm not saying that there aren't ways that you can connect these beings and get help. You can. I've got help many times. The question has to be, we don't know for sure what we're connecting to. I can say I'm connecting to this spirit guide or this power animal, whatever, but we don't really know that.
mm-hmm.
And here's the thing to really for people to think about. So the farmer keeps, 40 sheep with the idea at the end of the year he's going to send them off to the slaughterhouse so he gets the payment for the sheep at the end of the year. That's what he's got. He's got the sheep to make the money off 40 sheep. That's all he's doing. But one of the sheep gets sick. So the farmer, of course, calls up the vet, and the vet comes out, gets the sheep well, fixes it up. Now the sheep might think this farmer's the greatest guy in the world. I was in pain, I was suffering, and I was praying for this farmer friend. Please help me. And he heard my prayer. He came and he helped me. Now I'm better again. And then 3 weeks later, off to the slaughterhouse and dead. So we always have to be looking at, even when we get help, what is the nature of that help? And since everything is energetic, are we even bizarrely, if we go outside of ourselves, are we making an energetic deal? Are we saying, yeah, if you, we're kind of saying, people always say, oh, if you just help me now, I'll do this. People make these promises, or the promises to God, right? If you just do this, I promise I'll start doing this. That's an energy exchange. There's an
Mm-hmm.
energy exchange that's being set up. And so many times we make prayers and we don't realize we might be setting up an exchange later on that some other being is going to say, hey, by the way, remember back when you were 28 and you asked for this? Yeah, well, time to pay up. And if we start to see that the beings that exist on all levels of our realm are more operating like the mafia than they are operating like a bunch of nice friends, yeah, you ask the mafia, they'll what's something, they'll help you out. Sure, no problem. We got what you need. Here you go. But in a month, hey, by the way,
Yep.
remember when I helped you out? Yeah, my turn now.
You got to sell your
And
soul.
so yeah, and so when we start to think and I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying it's time to start thinking like that. Then why wouldn't we start trusting the one we should have been trusting all along, which is ourself? Once we start realizing that actually anything that's ever transformed has come from ourself, any healing that's ever done has actually come from ourself. Something outside of us may have helped trigger that, may have helped give us, show us what was missing or what we maybe needed, or hey, you should have these kind of herbs. That's going to help, the thing you've got going. But it's still, we're the one who takes the herbs. We're the one who brings the herbs in our body. It's our body that assimilates them. It's our body that does the work. We have this unbelievable power, and we keep projecting it outside of ourselves. There's someone outside that I need to listen to, that I give my authority to, that it's someone outside that's got to help me, that's got to fix me, that's got to tell me what to do, that's got to fix my karma. But we have all that ourselves. this has been one of the most amazing changes in my life in the last few years, is seeing how often I was focused myself, even through all of my work, on something outside of me. Something outside of me was going to give me answers. That if I just went to the right, if I did the right spirit journey, if I went to the right source, I would get the answers I was seeking. It was outside. Well, I should, but we have everything already. So why don't we make the turn and put our focus here, learn how to trust ourselves again, how to trust our own power, and then we can pick and choose things outside of ourselves as needed, but we don't require them. We're becoming more, we're getting more free will. The more we begin to trust ourselves and our own inner power, that's, I think, gaining your free will back, because then you can choose, yeah, I can use your help right now, but I don't really need it. I've got all this myself. So it's a lot of the book that I've just written, Next to the Cave, will sound very negative to a lot of people. It's going to sound very, very difficult for people to go through because it's breaking a lot of potential illusions and beliefs. But my point is once you start breaking these very, very difficult beliefs we've been holding onto our whole life, what's at the core is our own inner power and our own inner totality, our own actual soul. And it's like, why wouldn't you want to get to know that? Because what better thing is there to know in this world than yourself?
So well said. And with a few of the things you were talking about, it kind of made me think. So without putting words in your mouth, are you saying that we as a collective have the power as co-creators to rewrite the script within this reality that we live in? And in other words, we can, as the collective, kind of rewrite the program within the simulation.
To a degree, right? We can't actually rewrite the whole thing because the demiurge created it a certain way. So we can't, while we have actually more power than even the demiurge, and the demiurge knows that. That's why it's afraid of us, in a sense. It's trying, part of the reason all this control happens is because what happens if humans get all their power? The thing is, though, here's the thing that people haven't really, I don't think about too often. We're always focused on trying to change the simulation, as opposed to, why wouldn't we just turn it off?
Right.
Because if the simulation, if we assume this video game has characters from outside of it, let's say us, true divine sparks of the totality, and then there's a whole bunch of non-player character game created pieces who are there to run whatever the game wants. When the game ends, the divine sparks will return back to their source. The things that are non-player characters will end with the game. And this was something that was foretold. I don't remember which Nag Hammadi scripture it's in one of the early Gnostic Christian scriptures, which talks about that, which says when that eventually this realm, they call it a copy, is how they describe this reality. When the copy, eventually the copy will end, and they call it Yalbadoeth, the demiurge, and all of his archons will remain, and the rest of us return back. So it's this idea of, if we in a sense pull the plug on the simulation, if we stop, if I think all we would have to do is stop feeding our power back into the system. That would be it. We wouldn't need to actually forcibly transform it. We just unplug from it, you might say. Just that matrix similarity, we unplug completely from it, and eventually the simulation would stop and we would leave. Now that's a long way down the road, and I don't personally want to be around for another 1,000 lifetimes in this insane reality until that happens. So one way of unplugging from the simulation is to just leave, is to just return home to consciousness. And somebody might say, well, that's being selfish. All these other beings that you know and don't know, they're all still trapped in the simulation. Don't you want to help them? Don't you want to be the equivalent of a bodhisattva, right? In Buddhist tradition, don't you want to help everyone awaken first before you awaken? The trick being, though, is, but every being who does actually return home, every divine spark that returns home, is one less power source for the matrix. It may seem like not much, only 100 left this year, but that's 100 less power sources that are running this matrix. And I'm curious, we're right now we're in the Great Reset. This is not sort of some sort of accidental language. This is very, very clear what they're telling us. They're resetting this entire reality. They're going to re-push the start button on the simulation. And I think that's happening because they're not getting enough power. The power supply, they need a new, bigger power supply, and they're not getting enough for whatever reason. Maybe, maybe enough people over the last 100 years or something have left. And they're what we're seeing, if you think of the reset, and again, like energy terms, it's all energy. Part of from their perspective is they need to up the energy power they're getting from the system. And when you start to realize that's what it's about an energy change that the system is going to take from us within it. You understand what's really good. It has nothing to do with commerce, it has nothing to do with money, it has nothing to do even with the entire control structure. It's about energy. And so if we stop giving the energy to the system's in big trouble. That I think is the greatest power, is to again turn the energy to all of us and to our, you know, what we call communities, our closest friends. Because one thing we've learned in the last 3 years, you've learned who your friends are. You've truly
Hmm.
learned who your friends are. A lot of people have become very alone in the course of, their family. Your family doesn't talk to you anymore. Your friends don't talk to you anymore. They think you're nuts, and you're out now. But you will have gained a few new friends, hopefully, in the course, or if you haven't, you will soon, who think like you do, who feel the world the way you do. And so all of a sudden, you're building a true family now. You're building your true family that is at your deepest thought soul level, not just friends that exist because you played on the same sports team and you went to the same school, so you're supposed to be friends. What this has done is shown that all of that is just covering. That's just like clothing. And you're now, yeah, we might have I myself have lost hundreds of friends over the last few years from the work I've been doing, but the
Yep.
ones I have left, we think the same. And so now it's like you want to share your energy with them. And so getting back, we stop sharing with the system, we share with our true friends and our true family. We're building a power for ourselves, not for it. And what it does is fine. It can do whatever it wants to do. We can choose what to do with our power and how we want to use it and how we want to create, at least you can say, the experiences we want to have.
Well said. And my Facebook page manager, Peter, he's a big follower of your work. He loves your
Oh, yeah.
research. Um,
Hi, Peter.
and so he sent this to me last night. He wanted me to ask you, what if the universe we live in is truly dualistic and one cannot exist without the other? Have you ever considered that the sun we observe within our atmosphere is a positive energy force which feeds the soul and body with energy? But meanwhile, in the center of the earth, known as Hyperborea, there is a negative source of reverse energy known as the black sun. Do you suppose that this is what negative entities feed on? And if we were to ever go near the black sun, we would be drained of energy and probably die. But would our sun require a black sun to even exist? Or would it be able to exist without? Is the black sun a balancing yin yang effect? Too much positive sun can overload reality and make it crash with too much energy. Very poetic. He's got a very sharp mind.
Yeah,
It's a lot there. I know that's a lot there. It's
yeah,
loaded.
but when you begin to understand that the matrix is duality, and the matrix doesn't exist. You can't have up without down. You can't have left without right. You can't have ugly without beauty. You can't have everything needs its opposite. And here's the weird thing: the system controls both sides always. It doesn't matter. It's controlling up, it's controlling down, it's controlling the light side and the dark side. So we see dark forces as controlling only darkness in the realm. Bizarrely, they control the light as well, because only with the controlling of the light do you also have the dark. It's very weird. Light is light in this realm. Light is dark is disguised as light as much as it's presented as dark. um, the Gnostics talk about what you call true good. They say you can't have actual good here because good is always instantaneously tainted by bad as soon as it turns into the material realm. But true good, you might say, would exist, or true light does exist, but it's not here. It's not in the material world because it needs its opposite. True light has no opposite. True good has no opposite, right? What we think of as good has to have an opposite, evil. And so when we begin to see that everything in this realm is this giant interplay of energy, and it doesn't matter which one you fall onto, your energy is focused on a particular. I know this is very complex for people to understand, but it's bizarre. Like um, the total. It's partially if you think of this in terms of magnets. The power is actually in the middle of those two magnets. So if you put two magnets together, between the two magnets is a point of where you could put a piece of metal and it would be suspended there indefinitely. The power of those magnets creates that power in the middle. As long as we are slightly off center, that power is not there. So as long it doesn't matter which side we've moved to, even if it's just one step to whatever we're in the matrix. Literally, you have to be in this. It's partially this idea of being in this middle way of literally having no foot on either side of it. It's hard to explain, but when you're in the midpoint, not only do you have all the power, the matrix has no control over you. So it's this bizarre thing to have to navigate this realization that as that's the story of eating from the tree of good and evil.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do. It has what it's doing is it's you can say Adam and Eve in the story are not actually in the material world yet. That story is not describing the matrix yet. They're still outside of the matrix. And there's this one tree that says, hey, come in here and you can start having experiences more than you could ever have in this world. I'm going to give you multitude of experiences. I'm going to give you a brand new what's that called? The metaverse, a brand new metaverse for you to experience. Just come into the duality. And that's the symbol of it. The symbolism of they've entered duality. They've entered the simulation. And as soon as you've entered the simulation, it means everything is, in a sense, a part of the simulation, except in this case, Adam and Eve's consciousness, which is the only thing that actually physically they didn't enter. Consciousness, awareness entered. So awareness is now in the simulation and experiencing everything in dual terms, including their own awareness, including our own awareness. We're experiencing our own awareness in terms of duality. So it's bizarrely, it's one of the things, once you can, if you can find a way to literally be in a 0 point with no duality, that's your first step of being out of it. But there's also this weird place called the void, which is also in duality, which makes you feel like you're out of duality. And this is where a lot of the spiritual traditions around the world and the so-called gurus have tricked themselves. They've hit this point called the void. They think they're in this absolute reality, but they're not. They're still in a very fine piece of the matrix. And now they present from that place. And even though they maybe don't feel like they're being dishonest, they truly believe what they're saying, it's still not truth. They're still false wrapped into what they're saying. So it's so much of a tricky navigation for all of us to go through, understanding being a non-dual awareness trapped in a dual reality.
Well said. Wow. And when Peter wrote that to me, talking about the sun, it also made me think about, and I had to write it down, about, because I feel like the sun that we see, if this is all a matrix, all simulation, like I said, that's the only words, that's the only way we can describe it, video game. But
Yeah.
so I was watching the TV show called Alone, where 10 survivalists are dropped off at a remote location. The last one to survive and who doesn't tap out of the challenge wins $500,000. So, anyways, this one particular survivalist is dropped in a location on a lake surrounded by mountains, and the temperature is very cold. He can see the sun across the lake hitting the other side of the mountains. He started crying and kind of got depressed because he realized that he will never get sunlight while he is in the challenge because the mountains behind him hide the sunlight in his location of the lake. So the
Okay.
survivalist made the long hike just to get him a few minutes of sunlight so he can feel the warmth on his skin. He began to have tears of joy because of how awesome the rays of the sun felt on his skin. My question is, Howdy,
Mhm.
if we live if we live in some type of simulated reality, What role does the sun play in this artificial Sims world construct? Because if nothing is as real as it seems, the sun obviously plays a crucial and vital role. And you kind of explain some of this, but the sun plays a crucial and vital role within our existence in this matrix like world. So if this is a simulation, could the sun be like a cosmic simulated transmitter that supplies energy throughout our existence, like a battery cell to help us maintain life within this digital nightmare we live in? Maybe the sun supplies our soul the energy it needs to survive, since our soul is disconnected from the true source and not meant to be stuck in this artificial simulation.
Yeah, it's again, once you start seeing that it's all not what we think it is, we begin to start recognizing that there are weird interconnections of all this stuff. So sun, moon, and all the planets have some sort of weird connection point. So
Yeah.
we have first is the issue of the name of the sun itself. So that's what we use in the English language. But in almost all the other European languages, it's SOL, right? That's the word
So
for the sun, and it's pronounced soul. That is the word. So right there,
I don't mean
when
to
we
cut you
think
off,
of the
but
soul,
it's kind of interesting. Soul, SOUL or
right,
SOL, right? You know, it's kind of
right.
wordplay
So
there.
it's so right away we're being told that what we're called a soul inside links automatically to soul, thus what we call the sun. So we're instant. We for first it's a connection right away. Then we have it's also known as Helios, right? That's another
Hmm.
word for the sun. Hell, Eos. So the fire of hell is and also the fire of the sun. And there's so many near-death experiences. One of the things my book tries to go through is look at a lot of different near-death experiences. And and in the near-death experience, a lot of people have said the white light tunnel that they go to, which of course my book is suggesting that might not be a very good thing to do at all, is many have claimed, some have claimed it's the moon, but a lot of others have claimed it's the sun. And because it's white, the sun it appears as white, certainly to us now. I mean, when I was younger, it was much more yellow, but now it's very white and very strong and very much like a lamp. Like the way the lamp is behind me shining down, that's exactly what the sun looks like. And I get the sense now that there's an interplay between Saturn and the rings around Saturn, which Saturn apparently used to be the original sun, the original power source of this realm. The ancients talked about two suns in the sky.
Hmm.
And Saturn eventually, we might say, was turned off. But when it was turned off, it may have been given these rings, and those rings look very similar to a record. And then the record might be the source of everything in the simulation. And it's just Saturn is spinning and it's playing. It's being projected to the sun and it's being projected to the sun, which is projecting it into this reality. And then the moon might be the place where you might say we're being sucked back into. So the moon sucks us back into there, reprocesses us, sends the soul back to the sun. How about this for freaking people out? What if what if we don't, because almost no one gets out of the reincarnation trap, unfortunately. And if our soul is ready to be reincarnated again, the first thing that happens to the soul, which is energy, it gets drawn to the sun. And the sun brings in that soul energy, burns it up, projects it back into the realm. So the sunlight we are using to bring into our body and for everything to live is really the souls of all the deceased creatures who just recently died being projected back to us. How's that for freaky?
I need to put my tinfoil hat on for that one, man. That's I haven't heard that, and I've heard a lot. That is kind of freaky, but it makes sense though. If you
Yeah.
start if you research this stuff, Howdy, I know you have, I have, many people that be watching this have. That definitely makes sense. And you're talking about the moon, and Peter, he's a Brit. He's British. Facebook page manager. And thanks for all the Facebook page
Yep.
or the followers on my Facebook page. We're pushing 110,000 followers. Thank you very much. A year ago I had like 50,000. It's blown up. Thank you very much. But he said, how do we avoid the archon light trap during a NDE near death experience? And here's where his British his little humor comes in. My guess is we have to blow up the moon, you know, and
Hmm.
he thinks that the moon has something to play with. And I think it's possible because David Icke talks about the moon matrix, and a lot of other people, and I know you talked about it, and other researchers have
Yeah.
talked about how it keeps us.
Have
It
you
keeps.
ever had, by the way, have you ever had the chance to see clouds on the behind the moon? Have you ever seen that? Because I've seen it a few times.
I've seen the lunar wave, but I haven't seen the clouds.
Yeah.
Um,
That's really weird when you see the moon is here and the cloud is coming, and then the cloud goes behind the moon, like the cloud moves and the sun and the moon keeps shining and then it
yes,
keeps going.
yes, I know what you're
Oh,
talking. Yes, it's weird.
yeah, it is weird.
It's
And it's again, it's indicating that what we think we're seeing up there is nothing of what it really is. You know, we are, you know, it's the challenge is you get all, you know, the earth is not round, it's flat. The earth is this, the earth is that, the sun is this, the moon is that. And we can argue all sorts of things, and you can find a lot of really interesting information to prove your point. The problem is, but we can't actually prove it. You and I have not been up in a giant ship of some kind together to get close enough to any of this stuff to verify for ourselves what the real deal is going on. All we can kind of do is say what science tells us is obviously not true. It doesn't take long to break down science's story of whatever outer space is. And but then we're left with, well, we have no idea what's going on.
what
And
if
if we
there's
don't even
truth?
know what's going on, yeah, if we don't know what's going on, then how much do we know about anything?
What if there's truth on both sides? Howdy. But what if?
Yeah,
What
well,
if?
that's another issue I get. Yeah, like
Be,
when somebody says, "Is the Earth? Do you think the Earth is a round sphere, or do you think it's flat?" And I say, well, it could be both. It could
well,
be neither.
well, I think if we live in this simulation, this video game reality, I like to say bullshit reality we live in. Um, well, what if the code it projects the program within this reality? It projects whatever belief you have.
Yeah,
If you,
yeah. That's a
you know what I
totally
mean?
clear. That's a totally possible answer. That's yeah. Two people could have completely opposite viewpoints on the same subject, and both can be true, because again, it's not. It's a simulating reality, and the reality is X. You know, we have 40 different possibilities, and as long as we choose one of those 40, it'll reveal it to us. If we try to reveal number 41, though, because again, it's not finite. This is another thing people don't realize. It makes sense that if you're designing a computer program, reality, you don't want to program 10 billion possibilities. The code would be enormous.
Yeah.
So you try to limit your code, you try to limit your possibility. It's one of the reasons if you're asking for, would this, is this like a simulation? Just look for looping, time loops in your own life, looping reality, time loops of history. It's one of the reasons to study history is to see
Deja
history
vu's.
just keeps repeating over and over. And this would make sense if you're in a simulation, because it would make sense to have a limited number of possibilities so that you don't have a massive code. You just switch from A to B to C to D to B and then back to A again. And lo and behold, you cut down your coding. So it links into the same thing of like you can have multiple possibilities of say, what is the moon? As long as you or I choose one of those, yeah, 40 or 50 possibilities, that's what we're going to see. But if we start moving to number 60, the program will some way block that. But there's enough possibility that so many of us will choose one of the ones that's viable, and lo and behold, we are both right and wrong at the same time.
So it kind of goes down to the philosophy of what is truth. Do we all
Yeah.
project our own vision, our own reality within this simulation of what truth is? Because
Yeah.
if we all project within if this program projects our nature of reality in different ways within different people, then everybody has bits and pieces of truth within themselves.
Yeah. You look at it this way, a projection is always false, right? A projection is always false. Truth, you might say truth is, and truth will be the same for everyone who finds it. Truth,
Yeah.
capital T, truth. Problem is, truth is not in the matrix. The matrix is all false. So when you're in the cave, you're always dealing with elements of truth. You'll deal with pieces of truth. You will never deal with the whole truth in its totality. And that's why someone who I became really liked in the course of my life, which is Richard Rose, teacher who lived in Virginia. He said, don't go after truth per se, go find false. Find something false and then drop it. Find something else false and drop it. And because there's lots of false we can find, and that's eventually it gets harder and harder and harder to determine what's false or not. But eventually you'll get to the one thing that you can't drop. The one thing that no matter how you try to claim it's false, it's not. And then you realize, oh, that's the truth then. So it's this bizarreness. We try to determine, I know what the truth is, and I'm going to go forward towards it and prove it, as opposed to his suggestion is the opposite. Walk backwards and drop everything false until you bump into the one thing you can't drop, and oh, that's the truth. And it's a great metaphor of how to walk the path, because that's something we can all do. Every single one of us can find something false, like, hey, it's false for me to drink 14 cups of coffee in the morning. That's not good for my body. That's not helping me. So you know what? I'll go back to 1 cup of coffee. Okay, I've removed one piece of false. And we just keep moving on, little things. And then we get bigger and bigger and bigger. And as you say, when you start having something classified more of an awakening, if you use that term, usually that what an awakening is a giant mass of false all drops at the same time. That's the best way of describing it. We might have 1,000 pieces of false and 200 of them all drop at once. Boom. And all of a sudden, we're like, we see this area that's been covered with false unbelievably clearly. And we're like, wow. And it just blows our mind because so much dropped at once. But that's really what's happened. It's not so much we've found anything true. We just, a whole bunch of false, even if we weren't doing it ourselves, it did it on its own. It all just left. And we're like, now we don't have that weight of false anymore. So that's my way of looking at truth. Truth is the removal of false. And there'll be one thing you won't be able to remove, and that will be truth.
Do you think you can do another 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah, go right ahead. You just
So
yeah, we're good.
because
15
man,
minutes, that sounds good.
I'm enjoying this conversation with you. I'm connecting within within the simulation with you. So back to the reincarnation trap. And Will said, you're loaded with great philosophy. Man, you really are. And I think that's one thing that the alternative researchers, I think a lot of them, a lot of people, a lot of researchers, they don't dive into much philosophy of things. And I believe our entire existence can be better explained with philosophy, But if we are in this endless loop of this reincarnation harvesting trap of our consciousness, our soul, whatever, maybe that's why there might actually be non-player characters in this artificial like simulated reality, is because these non-player characters have reincarnated so many times to where they are burnt out deep within their subconscious from all the endless looping of being reincarnated for thousands of years. And that non-player characters couldn't handle the load anymore, to where their spirit battery just doesn't have any more juice left and walk around this reality like a soulless, lifeless zombie. Because if you look around, man, we got these zombies that walk around every day. There's no expression. You know what I mean? What do you think of that, Howdy?
Yeah, I like how you presented that. I've talked about this idea of, yeah, characters who aren't human like we think human, that they're somehow just extras in a movie
Were
that
they
are there
all
just to populate the world.
were they
Yeah.
all people just like me, you, and others that are watching this that
Yeah.
have souls,
So that's
and
right.
but
So that's
they were
a real
reincarnated
good
so many
question. Yeah.
times and they're just burnt out. That's where these NPCs come from, because they reincarnated through this soul trap, reincarnation trap so many times they burnt out, and that's how they become an NPC.
That's a really interesting question. So we've got the normal way people would think of it, or the way I sometimes say it in these discussions and come across only one viewpoint, is that they're literally manifested that way from day one. They were literally manifested as not, they were never human ever. They were always non-player characters, and they were just, but we've got two other options, one of which you just said. One of which is, okay, these were all at one point all human characters. And like, now that's a really interesting theory, that they've reincarnated so many times and maybe had just not come up with enough understanding in those ones, that they kind of just hit a point where they just kind of gave up, and they kind of stopped fighting, you might say, kind of stopped something, enough just happened to say, I just can't do this anymore, but they couldn't get out.
And
And
they
they
became
kind of
cogs in the
just, so they
machine.
turned themselves off. Yeah, they've literally like flipped a switch then to just say, well, this is my way of not dealing with reality. That's one way of doing it. They're still functioning on sort of like a biological level, but that's as far as they're going. That's one theory. Here's another odd theory of what this could be, and that comes from the book Replay by a novel by Ken Grimwood, wrote in the 1980s, which became the basis of Groundhog Day, except in Replay, the character's reliving his whole life over and over again, not just a day. And eventually he comes to the woman that he'd come to know, who was also replaying. One replay, she's not there. She never switched back into her total consciousness. And he wondered, did she actually then awaken in her last life? And so her consciousness is gone, but the body is just, it's still it's programmed in the game. The body is programmed in the game. The body will go on even if the conscious awareness is no longer here. And so so he began contemplating this idea of, well, wait a minute, maybe in a sense, like some of us are thinking, oh yeah, all of those non-player characters, they're all asleep, they're not getting it. I'm advanced, I'm getting it. It could be the other way around. Maybe they got it a long time before, their consciousness has already left, and like I'm one of the last ones to figure it out. Maybe, like you say, the non-player character, the body is still functioning, but the awareness left because it actually figured this place out. And rather than being like the first one, I'm one of the last ones. It's a good hit for the ego to possibly think of it that way. But all of those things are possible because once you begin to recognize, and in the last 2 years, it's become even more clear, a lot of people are not really thinking at all. And you begin to realize, as you notice, they've never been really thinking at all. They've literally been, yeah, I talked about this in a couple of places where I started noticing this like 20 years ago. I began noticing that there were people who were not people. Now, some of them I noticed were not people from the standpoint of like they're literally beings from another realm who are just borrowing a physical body here and are interacting with reality. Sometimes it's been messages. Like sometimes I've had experiences with what I call beings of the forest, who is like the spirit of a forest has taken a human form to interact with me or people I know and have some sort of positive, useful information, and then they literally disappear. And but that's one kind of. Then there's another kind of form that's also, I realized, they're not really human, but they're not spirits either. They're here. And when I would have conversations with them, they had a very tight box of information, or not information, of answers that they could share. So you could talk to them on like 1,000 subjects, but they would have only like 100 or 200 answers. And I began to notice, it's like, and it was a game. I'd be like, okay, so I'm going to talk to them. Yeah, I'll talk to them about the moon first, and then I'll talk to them about Tibet, and then I'll talk to them about quantum physics, and then I'll talk to them about making a hamburger. And I noticed their answers are exactly the same. It doesn't matter what subject I'm saying; the answers are like scripted, and that's very. And I'm like, is this all they got? Like, if they maybe only got 100 actual answers, and it doesn't matter what questions I'm answering, this is all they can give me. And I'm like, who am I talking to here? What? So already 20 years ago, before this was being discussed, I was going through this of like, okay, I think we got a lot of people here that don't really function beyond a very tight little script, but I can't say for sure where they came from, how they got there, just that they're there. And it's a bit dangerous for those of us who want to go against the system, because anyone who's in that mode will follow what you might say the projection. It's another thing to think about our realm. Our realm has a particular standard frequency that gets put out. It's like a giant musical note. And you might say we're supposed to tap into the note and follow at that frequency. The problem is that frequency helps the system. That doesn't help us. That frequency is part of the enslavement process here. So as we begin to break from that, we start tuning into a slightly different frequency. We're still here, we still interact with everyone, but we don't automatically, the message comes, hey, it's time for you to do this. Oh, okay, we just do it. We will, wait a minute. That's a dumb thing to do. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to think about this some more. But when we recognize it's a frequency, and a majority of whatever we want to call them, however we want to see them, they're automatically plugged into the frequency. And that frequency is not designed for freedom. It's designed for enslavement. So we realize we've got a problem because we've got a massive number of what look like people out there who are just going to follow the frequency. And so here we are to They Live, right? The end of the movie They Live, which was another great movie, it ended when Rowdy Roddy Piper blew up the giant tower and stopped the frequency that was going into the city that stopped people being able to see the aliens. And again, we're back to maybe that's another thing. All we really have to do is the frequency and sense that's being broadcast to this reality that is locking the majority of people into seeing a particular way. If the frequency turned off, maybe that would be enough to get everybody to just go, whoa, what the hell's been going on? Where have I been
Hmm.
living? And maybe that I've wondered for a long time. Sorry, I sometimes go for long periods of time and
No,
don't let
go
you talk.
ahead.
I've sometimes started to wonder if that's what the original pyramids were doing, whether it be in Egypt or Mexico or all over the world, that the old ones, the really old ones, the really huge ones, were designed to alter this controlling frequency on the realm. And as long as these pyramids were functioning and as long as these pyramids were being able to be interconnected and protected, maybe the frequency wasn't gone. This enslavement frequency wasn't gone, but it was weakened enough that you had a chance with every human you came across to get them to jump out of this enslavement band. Just
And,
something I thought about.
wow. Got to have you back on for another show. But and maybe that's the reason why they switched to this frequency. They switched to, was it 440 hertz in the music industry?
Yeah,
It used to be
sure.
432. You know.
Yeah, I think when we be again, you were talking about it's energy, and you could also say it's frequency, it's music, it's sound. I know that the ancients, particularly when I studied ancient Egypt, and I realized all of their healing went through three phases. The first phase was to remove any entities or any forces from outside of this realm that were impacting you. Otherwise, no matter what healing you do, they're going to steal the energy. The second thing you do was frequency modulation, was to bring the right frequency and the right sound back to that person. So each of us has our own sound, our own natural frequency. So we just have to bring that back. And first thing was to bring that sound back into balance. And then the third part of it would be then to go, whether it's the herbs or the practices or the things that have to be done for the body, because once you put the other things in step, the third part of it finishes the job really quickly. So we can also see this as a giant frequency, a giant experience of frequency and sound. And as we begin to understand that and work just on the frequencies that are around us and realize how many frequencies and sounds around us are negative to our body, certainly all the cellular frequencies, the radio frequencies, all of that stuff, the more we can find ways to block all that out and have as many natural sounds as possible. Like you say, you like to go for a walk in nature. Part of going for a walk in nature is just hearing the sounds. It's hearing the birds, it's hearing the water running, it's hearing the trees moving. Those are natural, calming, connecting sounds for the body. It's cleaning out the negative energy we've got from the day of working with our screen. So it's all of these little things we need to be. They sound small. They sound like go for a walk in nature and listen to the birds. That doesn't sound like a big thing to do, but it might have a huge thing over time. If you're doing this day after day after day, you might be making changes without even realizing it's happening.
Well said. And I got one final question before we end this
Yeah,
interview.
sure.
One thing that I believe is going on with all this, they're changing the frequency of music. You
Yep.
could talk about 5G, all this thing that isn't natural within the human resonance, within the true source of what possibly our true reality is. Maybe the archons play into this picture also. Maybe the archons, they manifest themselves within certain elites in the world to create this. Maybe that's why they're pushing towards this artificial intelligence and this artificial construct, this artificial reality we live in. Maybe the archons or whoever are taking over these certain one percenters in the world, because maybe one goal, one agenda is because they want to hack, uh How do they hack souls before they come into existence, before they come into this reality? Maybe they don't have souls, because here's the question right here. And I've said this before on other shows. Let's use the Wi-Fi and computer metaphor. I would say our brain is like a hard drive, and our pineal gland acts like the transmitter that can pick up these Wi-Fi signals, such as a computer. Our soul could act in similar ways that a Wi-Fi signal does to all computer-related devices. Maybe when we are in the womb of a pregnant woman, possibly in the developmental phase of that fetus, maybe that woman's pineal gland picks up and transmits an incoming Wi-Fi signal, aka the soul. And somehow it transmits that signal to the child. And could that be a reason why they are keeping us in a perpetual state of fear and anxiety, so that they can hack the incoming soul, aka Wi-Fi signal, before it becomes implanted into the baby? But none of this can be possible if first their manufactured artificial reality doesn't come through fruition. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, there's an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, I can't say I would know one way or the other how this functions specifically. I'm still working on trying to understand it more. Um, but it seems like from one good book that I read by a woman named Angelica Anagnostou. She wrote a book called Can You Stand the Truth? And her description of it was what we truly are is she called it a divine spark. And there's a lot of metaphors in these ancient world that talk about we originally came in by Lucifer falling out of heaven and breaking a piece off a star, and this star came with Lucifer into this realm, and this is representing all of us, this divine spark. And then what the creator of this realm did is took the divine spark and managed to combine it with energy, and that's our soul. That's what she's described. I'm not saying it's true, but that's so it's we have a divine spark and we have energy placed together. So we have this, and then that gets moved deeper and deeper into matter. So the great challenge is that even if we get to the level of just pure energy, we are still not at the divine spark part. That's our soul. We have to even learn how to unplug the energy part, remove the energy, so there's just the divine left, just the true light left, and that's returns home. Now, how does that function? I mean, because everything here is a system. Everything here is, that's one of the things to study, geometry and mathematics and astronomy and astrology. And it's because it's revealing the framework of the computer program. That's what it's telling you. It's telling you how this is set up. So if you understand the program, even if you understand astrology, you understand sacred geometry, you understand mathematics, you understand frequency, sound, you understand this. You can actually, that's one of the reasons to start how you can start navigating here. So it would be interesting to see, yeah, when would the thing called the soul actually enter the physical vehicle? Does the soul enter the physical vehicle? Because I know some people put so much faith on the birthday. The day the thing came out of the mother's womb, that's the birth date. That's where the astrology is going to come. But wait a minute, technically, the conception date should be far more important. The moment that the sperm and the egg, whatever, connected, that should be the initial spark of what that should. So really, like if someone is born in Taurus as a birth, technically then their conception should be in what the 3-month 3 signs uh, later than that, right? That would have been their 9 months conception. That should have been the real astrological point you should be looking at. Or maybe we call Taurus in the sky in May, but maybe the real Taurus, if it matches the symbolism of the kid and whatever, that really takes place in June or July or whenever the conception really happens. So that's something that's always been interesting to me, is so much focus is put on the birth. And I think that's also part of the whole within the realm trap. Because we have traps of the soul itself, and then we've got traps of our soul once we're in here, right? We've got the enslavement system once we're in here, and I think the whole birthing story and the language around it and law and all that kind of stuff is built to birth, not to conception. And so I try to remember, okay, I celebrate a birthday, sure, whatever, but I try to I try to celebrate my conception day as well, because conception day is the day when you might say something, at least in the material form, started to happen. And so for me, that I think somehow if we can focus on that, we're getting closer to our truth, closer to our divine spark. If we say, yeah, the birthday, that's just the day the physical shell came into existence, the thing that's interacting in the simulation came in. But when awareness first became into this level of the matrix, that was a conception. So yeah, how that works, I don't know. But um, here's a recommendation: if you have a young child around, somebody who can speak now, who's like 2 years old, 3 years old, see if you can ask them some questions. Because so many kids, young children, will remember their past lives. They remember their pre-birth memories. They remember where they were before this realm. They remember what, I mean, literally, they're fountains of information. And when they often would speak like this, the average parent would say, "Oh, stop talking crazy, stop talking like this, stop," and they stop them, and we begin to channel our children into being what they're supposed to be in this realm, and that's fine. But when we have this moment as well of they're maybe still touching the other realm, they've still got the memories of where we came from in the astral world. It'd be nice if we could get some casual, comforting conversation with them, and they can just. That's when I started believing reincarnation. I didn't believe it for a long time, but it was eventually there were so many verifiable stories of young children giving information about another life that was completely verified. Not only their name, where they worked, what kind of job they had, who their friends were, who they were married to, who their kids were, and it all panned out. And they knew things about people in those families that there's no way they could know. It was obvious that's who they were. So to me, I've had to say there's too many verifiable stories thanks to these checkings of young children. Then the whole purpose, then the book started going, okay, but is this really a good thing, like a lot of religion and spirituality wants to tell us, or is it all part of the trap? And yeah, we can come back the next time, talk about memory wipes, talk about Westworld, talk about Dark City. We've
Oh,
got
Westworld, yeah.
a thousand directions we can go
Peter,
into.
Peter, my Facebook page manager, you was talking uh about asking children, if they remember certain things. Peter, and I believe him 100%. My Facebook page manager, I believe him. He is a legit dude. Like he's no BS. And
Right.
he told me that he remembers going through the birth canal, going towards the light. He remembers that, and I believe
Okay.
him. And he don't
Yep.
he can't explain everything. He doesn't. He remembers that little instance whenever he was going
Right.
towards the light, the birth canal. And I'm like, man, that's wild. You know what I mean? But yeah, man, this was fascinating, Howdy. Where I'm getting goosebumps. Man, it was a hell of a show. And where would you like people to find your research, to buy your books? I know, of course, Amazon is, but where would you like? Is Amazon okay? We want somebody to go to your website or
Well, of course, Amazon's a place to go to take a look at the books and see what's there. And then now there's four of them that are on these subjects, and you can go wherever you want to order them if you'd like to get them. You don't have to buy them certainly from there. They're everywhere now. You can go to my website, which is the terribly named. I am getting a new website eventually, but Egyptian-wisdom-revealed.com. And for example, you can go to the new book and Exit the Cave, and you've got an opportunity to read a sample chapter there, first chapter, and there's a way to buy a PDF file there, or link yourself to buy a print copy of the book. And it's a nice way to support my work, of course. It's like not only getting a book, you're kind of making a research donation at the same time. And
Mhm.
that's always appreciated. And my YouTube channel is still running for now. Howdie Mickoski Talks. It's there, and it's on BitChute, it's on Rumble, it's on a few different places as well. It's starting to put it there, but it got like I don't know 300 videos there now of various subjects, and yeah, it's a chance just to go and look into some stuff and see if anything I'm saying is helpful to you. Because one of the reasons I started talking, even right after my death experience, was that other people have gone through difficult things. Other people have gone through challenging experiences. Other people have gone through weird experiences
Mhm.
and have kind of been told there's something wrong with you for having them. And I'm trying to, by sharing my various stories, it's giving other people to say, well, he's had the experience I had. He went through what I went through. And so maybe it's not such a bad thing. Maybe there's something positive in it, and people can start feeling okay to start looking into them again, sharing them, talking with other people again. It's that reminder that there's a lot of stuff out there in this realm, and a lot of it is a bit strange, and it's okay. And one of the things I'm doing is, yeah, sharing my own life story, because that hopefully others become okay with sharing theirs along the way as well. It's a jigsaw puzzle. Each one of us
Yes.
just brings a piece to the jigsaw puzzle, and the hope is that everybody brings their piece, and that's a way of finding out the totality.
Exactly. And one day that jigsaw puzzle, if everybody has a piece, everybody does have a piece to the puzzle. And one day as a collective, we will make a bigger, more beautiful picture with this jigsaw puzzle piece, with this nature, reality, our existence, where do we come from, and everything. But yes, fascinating.
Well, at least maybe we'll get to know it completely, because we shouldn't be deciding what we're going to do once we have the jigsaw puzzle yet. All we can do is say, let's get it together and let's acknowledge it when we do get it together, and then collectively, then we can decide what to do with it. Because again, we already potentially creating the trap before we've even got to the point where we can do something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's simple. It sounds like simple wording, but it makes a huge difference in how we go about what we're doing.
Howdy, thank you very much. It was a treat, an honor, a privilege, and I respect you very much for sharing your story. Thank you very much, man.
Hey, thanks. It was great having me here, and yeah, I look forward we can do this again sometime.